started recording.
It is the earliest I've started the recording. Look at that. Well,
just a slow and steady improvement. Is
third week is the charm, let me tell you. All right. So, how are you guys enjoying not this course, but just sort of the course in, the destination development course in general? So far so good? Are you learning lots of new stuff? You just type your responses in the chat, or if you can go off mute and give your thoughts on what's going on.
Yeah, so far so good, I would say. Morning. I feel like it's interesting, the things that we are learning in all courses, of course. And I like the interactive side of it, like yours, for example, so interactive. Something that we are really looking forward to. I mean, since it's always online, so the interaction is really a good thing here.
Oh, I'm glad that you're enjoying that. Excellent. And yes, you don't need to ask permission if you've got things you have to do. It's not a big deal to pop out, for 10 to 15 minutes or however long it takes to get your kid to school. Although on a day like today, make them walk. That's what I'm doing. Go take the bus.
I might do that in Halloween.
Oh, that'll be awesome. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's dive right in. We've got another full day of stuff to do. Hopefully you can see my screen here. I'm gonna do that. Enable the editing. Dismiss that. All right. Is that working for you?
Another flawless technical execution this morning, Chuck.
I'm doing, man. Stop.
You're on fire.
You're gonna make me cry. All right. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to do a review of what we talked about last week. So we're going to talk about operations. We'll get the course definition of operations, and we talked a lot about the areas of operations. And then we're going to dive into sort of the inner workings of an attraction. So what are some of the common departments within an attraction? How does operations fit in? What is or isn't attractions responsible for? And do we need a revised definition at the end of this? And then we'll spend a good amount of time talking about the first assignment, which we will provide to you today, and it'll be due next week. Okay. Any questions? Any concerns? Everyone have their coffees, hopefully. I've got no. Okay. All right, Michael, take it away.
Okay, so last week we talked about, and we came up with we put this definition out to the group, right? And we defined operations, and that was sort of after we went through all those different sort of examples and the themes and everything else like that. So, and what we came up with, as you can see up here, was that it's the processes involved with providing the very best guest service and experience in a safe, efficient, effective, and profitable manner. Let's go to the next one there, Chuck. All right. So areas that we talked about in areas of operations, right? So, we talked about admissions. So, just the physical act of, sort of selling and receiving tickets or admitting people into a gated attraction of some kind. Grounds and cleaning. So there's quite a bit in there. So in terms of, how you want to look at that in your attractions, it may be a large scale thing where you're, covering a lot of area, or you might just be looking at a small building or whatever, but, or maybe something that you're contracting out to somebody else to do. But, obviously if you're going to have people in a physical attraction, then you need to find a way to keep it clean and, and looking good. Safety. So, looking at the safety of everybody, the patrons coming to your attractions, the people working there, you know, that can take a broad, you know, sort of look in terms of, you know, what sort of, you know, is it occupational safety? Is it sort of the sort of physical act of, you know, sort of reviewing policies or procedures, things like that. Security, yet again. So, you know, we look at security in terms of, you know, you have your sort of asset security. So looking after just the assets that you own or operate, down to sort of physical security. So what you would sort of more, you know, seeing security guards in the corner, you know, or in the area, making sure that the public are safe. Risk management. So, you know, sort of mitigating risk, looking at, you know, opportunities to reduce that. So, you know, developing plans, things like that, which flows into emergency procedures. You know, we've got guest services and customer service. So, you know, somebody reaching out to, you know, to guests, whether they're in the attraction, away from the attraction, just sort of resolving issues or questions, queries, stuff like that, right? Going through that, rides and attractions, you know, your sort of water plays, your pools, that kind of stuff. So if you're a water attraction like a water park, then that would be something that you would have there. Or, you know, in a zoo or animal attraction, you're dealing with animal upkeep and welfare. So, you know, zoos, you know, keeping them fed, pens clean, veterinary services, those kinds of things. Or the aquarium, for example, you know, you have all those fish, so you have to make sure that you're taking care of that, and water quality, feeding, and, you know, the aquarists, as they call them, doing their work. You know, preservation or curation. So for museum attractions or for historical attractions, then you're looking, you know, you have areas of that operation that are looking after that, sort of maintaining legacies or curating, you know, collections, things like that, making sure that you have things that are relevant to your topic or to your area of focus. Education programs. So a lot of attractions, you know, pre-pandemic and hopefully post, that, you know, a lot of business done in the education area, right? So example, when, you know, at Ontario Place, we had the Cinesphere IMAX theater, and in our off season, it played a lot of films in conjunction with the ROM about, you know, Egypt, or about, you know, historical topics, documentary style films. So you could bring in school children to your attraction and, you know, use that program to facilitate it, you know, stuff that's attached to the Ontario curriculum, right? So that is another revenue stream for the attraction. Parties or groups, I'm sure, you know, Chuck can, you know, talk to that one. That's a very large piece of revenue for a lot of attractions, especially smaller attractions like FECs or, you know, stuff like that. Group business.
Sorry, Michael.
Yes.
FEC is Family Entertainment Centers, guys.
Oh yeah, sorry.
We are an acronym-rich industry, folks. We'll do our, and if you ever hear us use acronyms, you're like, what in the heck are they talking about? Just type it in the chat.
Yeah. So yeah, an FEC, Family Entertainment Center. So that would be more of your, yeah, like your smaller attractions, like Glow Zone 360, or the stuff that you would find in suburban areas. So like in the mall, or you know, that kind of stuff. So it's not intended to be like a large scale, or maybe a, you know, drawing from, you know, a massive sort of catchment of people, but sort of that sort of local stuff. Or even those little kids fun centers where they have like the little play place in there, or whatever, you know, whatever they call them, like zoos or whatever, those would be fall in that group. So a lot of them, you know, as mentioned before, the birthday parties or sort of parties, things like that, are a real driver for those areas. So that's a big area of focus. On the group side, you know, the sort of larger attractions or your sort of mid-size attractions, that's a bread and butter item right there in terms of groups. You know, some of the, you know, like even places like Canada's Wonderland do massive revenues and attendance on groups, and you know, they have their whole group catering area that's sort of built out. So they're doing, I think, you know, on some of the days that I was there, I mean, we were looking at like up to 10,000 people in groups. So that adds to your overall attendance. I mean, usually there's some sort of discount or, you know, thing built in, or you're packaging things up, right, to include a meal or to include this or whatever. But those are really, like, when you look at your sort of overall attractions attendance for sort of large and mid-sized parks, if you want to sort of push yourself to the sort of the next tier of admissions, then you need to be able to bring in those large groups to sort of fill those things in. And then some of them include buyouts and things like that. Food and beverage service, it could be its own department depending on the size of the park, and kind of look at that, but that's obviously a large piece of it. And then retail service, so in terms of selling of goods at the facility, so between your t-shirts, hats, keychains, any of the sort of items you want to sort of think about your sort of touristy kind of stuff. A lot of attractions sort of like you look at something like the aquarium where it actually ends at the gift shop, right? So that the purpose of the attraction almost feels like it's just to sort of at the end you're going to buy something to sort of remember that. Or I think if anyone here's been to Disney, a lot of their rides end at the gift shop too, so you get kind of dumped into a store right at the end. So all right.
So I did go off mute, which is great. All right, so we're gonna stop sharing this. Michael, thank you for that. So the first 20 minutes of class is when my kids and Trish are getting ready to leave. So Michael, I appreciate that. We saved a lot of background noise as the whirlwind that my family is got ready.
Another quiet day in the Thibault household.
Oh yeah, yes. The sad part is, besides Trish, I'm the quietest one in the house. Oh, anyway. All right, so I gotta get out of this. We're out of this. Escape, there we go. I gotta get to this one. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch over to the Padlet, and I will put the link in the chat here, which somehow I just lost. There we go. Oh, we have someone in the waiting room. Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay, so here's the link to the Padlet. Perfect. And I will then also share the screen. So you should be seeing the Padlet up there. Is that correct? With Canada's Wonderland, Toronto Zoo, CN Tower, Glow Zone?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. So what I'd like everyone to do over the next 15 minutes or so is start thinking about, just based on what we've just reviewed, start thinking about and writing in what departments each of these 4 attractions you think would have. What are some of the departments? And there's, once again, just like last time, there's no right or wrong answer. And you should be able to start putting down your thoughts. And while we're and you don't need the question marks off. So just perfect. So just start thinking, and we'll regale you with some stories while we're doing that. Mike, tell us a good story.
It's a good story, huh?
Oh,
Story is that I'm struggling right now here
are you?
on my computer.
Is it too early in the course to talk about the raccoon and the?
Oh dear, yes.
Yeah, that's too early.
Although I did shoot a raccoon out of a water slide this spring. So, he made it. He was fine. Yeah, he was sleeping in the slide when we were testing it.
Oh, so you turned it on?
Oh, I turned it on, and all I heard was this big boosh into the pool, and we didn't really expect anything to be in the pool. And poor guy, he woke up, got shot out of a water slide for his breakfast into a pool.
Well,
didn't look very pleased at me.
No. Well, it seems like a weird place to nest. It the plastic can't be all that comfortable.
They like the heat. They like being warm. So if you're in those enclosed tubes, they just love it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, I didn't realize you guys had closed tubes where you are.
Oh yeah. Well, only the best.
Well, I'm gonna go see if there's any coffee left over here, and then I'll be right back.
Excuse me, just to get that straight, are we working here operations only, or are we like still talking about any other departments? For example, the
Any other
marketing.
departments?
Okay, so
Yeah.
marketing still applies.
Any
Okay.
Yeah, anything that you think that would like they would have and sort of,
All right.
Oh my gosh, Brett, all the time. My mind, our minds work like together. Oh my gosh,
That's
it's
good.
killing me.
It's not. First of all, it's not a competition.
No, I mean it happens all the time. Me and her have exactly the same idea, exactly the same thing.
Excellent. Whoever just put down shows and entertainment, brilliant. Because I was thinking about that after last week's class that I didn't have that down as an operating department. So I thought that was, and I hadn't even thought of it because I haven't, it just didn't cross my mind. But yeah, I agree. I think that is probably an entire department.
the CN Tower. Do they have like an elevators department, you think?
Could you imagine being that repair person?
The elevator guy?
Yeah. Well,
Developer.
Gavin's best friend. That's he got into the union just waiting for his call to start his training for elevator mechanic.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. It's a cool job to have if you are not afraid of heights and can take the time to be safe.
Clearly it has its ups and downs.
Okay, that's it. We're out. Check, please.
Leave them on a high note now.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's awesome. Oh.
Glow Zone 360. What department? Oh, the laser tag department. Is that a whole department, Chuck? I'd like it to be one. I would like to run that department.
You would like to run the
just the laser tag department.
Yes. Well, my title at Glow Zone 360 is air hockey champion. We had a group in on Friday, and Ryan needed some help. There's about 60 kids, and of course, we can talk about operations. So operationally, what we did is we split them into 3 groups, and then we rotate them through all the different activities so that people are always doing something without any waiting, and so it keeps things moving and doesn't jam things up in a specific spot.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my group. We had about 15 minutes in the arcade. We were sort of the third group in, so we did have a little bit of a wait at the beginning. And so what I did is I just told them to line up. I'm not sure, Mike, did you ever play the game Bump when you were a kid?
Yeah.
The basketball game.
Yes.
So where everyone lines up and everyone has to shoot. So I lined them all up at one end of the air hockey,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, okay, if you score on me, you go to round 2. If you don't score on me, you're out. And kicked their butts. I think at some point it's more psychological, right? If the first guy I scored on, I go next, I yell it really loud, and the next
Yeah.
person showed up, and now they're like, holy cow, that guy didn't even get to touch the puck. And I shoot, I scored, and by the time I get to the 4th or 5th person, they're so wound up in their heads that they're not going to, they're not going to score, that they don't.
Yeah.
And I look like I know what I'm doing. When in fact it's all psychological warfare.
I see. And who were these people? You just laid a beating on these people, or were they like? It wasn't like a brownie troop or something, was it? Or
it was a bunch of grade 7 boys from St. Andrews College, and I didn't take it easy on them. Let me tell you. Yep.
Well, someone had to do it, right?
That's exactly right. Oh, that's funny. I'm
just gonna keep seeding some stuff in here.
We got lots of good stuff going on.
Yeah, the CN Tower. There's got to be a guy that runs the lights, right? Like the LED package that they have on it makes it light up in different colors now, right? At night.
It's true. It's true. It'd be fun to get into that. And I wonder who at the tower runs the trains. It is owned by CN, so maybe that's like the control tower for the for the train station. It's not as good as your up and down thing, but I thought that bad dad joke.
I see you're trying.
I tried. That was a big swing and a miss. I wonder if I'm gonna have to delete that from the recording here. We'll play some elevator music during that, or crickets. One of the two. Oh. We're getting lots of good stuff here. Yeah, so Trisha's got her ticket booked, but she can't. Did I tell you this last week? She can't rent a place until she gets her visa.
Oh, okay.
And everything is good. There's for some reason of course it's the Commonwealth Games, so they've got an HR firm that's supposed to be doing it, or two HR firms, and she's waiting on one little piece of information to get her visa done. Yeah. And if there's some, one branch of this big HR firm isn't talking to the other, so it's taking too long. So
well, they should probably get that sorted out, because I mean, at the Pan Am Games, the amount of internationals working with me was huge. So there was a whole department that was just dealing with, in the human resources, dealing with work visas and things for people coming in, right? So
yeah,
they're going to be doing a lot of them.
Well, you would think, and I think there's already a few Canadians over there, so you'd think that they would know how to go about doing it, for sure. So yeah, that's like, you talk about operations, to go over to a different country for 10 months, and her whole role is going to be operationalizing the medical response at all of the different venues, which I can't even fathom. She's got to get doctors and physios, and she's got to set up the first aid rooms and all of those sort of things. I'm sure. I'm sure by the end of it, well, she did it at Pan Am, so I'm sure that she's already kept her spreadsheet templates and those sort of things.
Yeah, I found with Pan Am, it was very much, they have a games like a lot of these people were, they traveled around. They kind of go from like Olympics to, sort of major sporting event, X to whatever. And they kind of have a playbook on how they run that stuff, right? And they just take it with them wherever they go.
Right.
And it's like you show up in some new city, working for the organizing committee, and you basically crack open that binder and say, okay, well, here we are on day one. And, and here's here's the first day of the games, and this is all the stuff we need to do to get there.
Yeah.
And,
oh yeah.
And then it's
yeah.
just
I was
changing the title and the building layouts and saying, okay, we're in Tokyo now, so this is what we're doing.
It's true. Trish was saying there's a whole culture of games employees that just go games to games. What a great way to see the world, though.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. The person I worked for at Pan Am Games, she had done every Olympic since '96 in Atlanta.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Like
Saw a lot of the world.
Winter and summer.
Yep.
Yeah, well, it makes sense, right? 2 years apart, and suddenly, as soon as you're finished the summer games, you trek over and spend 2 years planning the next winter games.
Yeah, that's how it worked.
Wow. What Trish likes about the Commonwealth Games is it's a smaller games than Pan Am, but it has a heck of a lot more money. And she'll hopefully get to meet royalty.
The Queen.
Come
out.
That'd be kind of neat, huh? All right. What do you think, Michael? Should we go through these?
Yep.
All right. Let's start with Wonderland. Here's what you guys thought. We got customer service, admissions, ride operations, maintenance, marketing, food and beverage, shows and entertainment, safety, special occasions, risk management, safety and first aid, product development, construction, and finance. What else is in there, Michael? What else do we? When you're talking special occasions, are you thinking groups?
No, I was thinking like on a bigger level, like they have Halloween on the whole.
Oh,
thing,
yes.
They have the Christmas thing, so those are special occasions.
Okay, yep. Theme, yeah, they're big. They're almost like season extenders. That's the way I looked at it.
Yep. And they are those sort of those Halloween and Christmas stuff. Yeah, you're right. Enough. They are their own kind of all of the operating departments in the park obviously operate during those, right? So they just modify their operation and continue on. So if you're in food and beverage, then your menu may change, but you're doing your thing. But there is a sort of we'll call it a sub department within the events and entertainment department there that is specifically tasked towards that event. So there are groups of people that spend their entire existence there planning out the Halloween event and then constructing it, or planning out the Christmas event and doing that. And even when the park's operating in the summer, they may have a small role in the park during the summertime, but they're actually planning months ahead. So they're like this sort of small little sub of the whole in terms of just sort of coming up with those things. And actually the Halloween event is pretty good example of like how do they operationalize it in terms of the sort of design construction. It's all done in-house, so they have their own teams of people, and they actually take them from, or they have backgrounds in like show production and television production, so set builders, costumers, those kinds of makeup artists, all that stuff are sort of housed underneath that department. And it's a pretty cool operation to see actually how even just before the night begins, they've got these people lined up, they have their call times to kind of make up or whatever. But yeah, it's they are their own little departments there.
Yeah, and actually, and a lot's changed there from, you know, when Mike was there, when we talked to the operations guys at Wonderland, you know, these days, when Mike was there, it was basically the summer, and they did. I'm not sure if the Halloween haunt was on back when you were, you know, not
No,
even
it
the
didn't
Halloween
exist.
haunt. So the ops guys were working like 1,000 hours a week during the summertime, but would have some time to make those hours up in the quote unquote off season, right? So between, you know, November, December, before they started to plan out the next year. Wonderland now, it's almost a year round operation. So the ops guys are going right from the craziness of the summer to setting up for the craziness of the fall, and then tearing that down and setting up for the craziness of the winter event, then tearing that all down and getting ready for the craziness of next summer. So I think what they, you know, when I talked to them, I think what they did is they've extended out the amount of people that are part of the ops team, so that they are now working year round and aren't having to, you know, front load all of their hours over the summer, where you know, staff used to disappear from their families for weeks on end. So it's just, you know, they had to change their own HR and operating procedures to fit the new realities of what was going on. What else do we had? We had did we go through all these? No, this is new one. Loyalty, membership management. So yep. So in that case, the seasons passes, finance, construction, product development, safety and first aid. Yeah, those are all good. All right, for the zoo, yeah, animal feeding and well-being, merchandise, marketing, finance, human resources, maintenance and groundkeeping. Holy cow, Britt, you're on a roll here. Look at her go. Resource acquisition. What do you, so for that, Britt, are you talking about like acquiring new animals or new displays, like when the pandas came, or are where are you going with that?
Yeah, kind of like everything, bringing in, like, you know, the food and any new animals and anything kind of to do with the like animal habitats and stuff like that.
Okay, yep, that makes good sense. Food and beverage research. That's an interesting one, and you're right. I think it probably is. They are a research facility as well. Community relations, admissions, and equipment. Equipment being, what were you thinking there, Britt?
Well, like I know they have like that weird safari tram system. And they also have like AV equipment for shows and stuff like that.
Okay.
And probably equipment in like the kitchens and stuff like that.
Yeah, so equipment / infrastructure is a good way to put that.
That's, yeah, exactly.
Perfect. All right. CN Tower ticketing.
But before we go,
yeah,
to
please.
the CN Tower, yeah, the Toronto Zoo, can we add like a partnership? I don't know what department will be handling this, because, for example, they had the Terra Lumina, something like where the light show was showing, and this is like a totally different company.
Yeah.
Like using the zoo sometimes land for some other, you know, kind of event. Yeah. Still we are with the event thing.
Okay. How do we call that? Third party rentals / revenue. I think that's a good way to, and we did that at Ontario Place when we brought in the Chinese Lantern Festival.
Yeah.
Actually, we that's probably, there's a lot of good stories there too. So we can definitely talk about that going forward, because that provides or creates a whole set of new challenges. How do you, and I think the zoo did the same thing, how do you go from running a park during the daytime for it, and you have to, people pay money and charge admission, then you have to clear it out, you got to get everyone out, and then you got to reopen and do it all over again. And I think Wonderland does that too, between Camp Spooky and the Halloween Haunt. So you've got the kids, the family event during the day, and then there's a turnover. So you have to, you call it a sweep when you work towards making sure that everyone's left the park, so that you can reopen the park under a different ticket type. It's very interesting. Okay, on the CN Tower, you've got ticketing, gift shop, marketing, maintenance, restaurant operations, safety, tour facilitators, social media management, financing, IT, and HR. Yeah. Anything else we can think of for that one? I think we've got a lot of that covered. And then at Glow Zone, birthday parties, yep, games maintenance, cashier, cleaning, health and safety, revenue management, general management, and food and beverage. All right, I think that makes sense. Mike, you good with all that?
All right, here, let me see. My headphone just died.
No,
Can
we
you hear
can.
me?
Yeah, we can hear you. It's all good.
Nod.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a good list there.
Okay.
My technology is failing me today in such a big way. It's not funny.
It's normally me that has that happen. So, all right.
I just had a question.
Yep.
Because I put general management on there, and I was kind of just wondering, like, because like there's, you know, in some of the bigger companies, there's the higher ups, like the CEOs and the investors and like the big decision makers. Like, does that count as like a department, or they kind of do their own thing?
Well, you know what? Let's park that.
They do.
Because you're going to find that what you put there is actually you hit the nail on the head with that one, right? And
Okay.
So I'm gonna stop the share here, and we'll go back to this one, and from the current slide, and we'll see how we're gonna say, let's see how we did. So what we did is we reached out to our contacts at each of these places to make sure they gave us and asked them to give us a list of the departments that they actually have. So what's really cool is you look into your list, and that Padlet will be available to you. I wish I could share a split screen, but if you're looking at the Padlet on a separate screen, you can see both. So at Wonderland, their departments include marketing and communications, group sales, which is actually a subset of marketing and communications. Finance is its own department, information technology, food and beverage, human resources, safety and loss prevention, security, admissions and guest services, facilities, landscaping, ride maintenance, technical services, creative services, and creative services. Oh shoot, he told me what that one was, because it's different than you've got the entertainments under park operations. It's a subset. I think creative services
is, sorry, can you hear me there, Chuck?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, creative services is where I talked about more of your really large scale decor and design type of work. So everything from in a themed attraction like that, everything obviously gets thought out, right? So, what are the paint schemes that they're using, signage, graphics, and then your large scale, like your Winterfest and your Halloween haunts, fall into the creative services. So, someone has to design the sort of look and feel, right? So, and even if you're not doing something big like a Halloween haunt or whatever, for a park like Canada's Wonderland, or even something sort of in the mid-tier size, there's a consistent brand and theme that you want to create in your park, right? In terms of, or your attraction, in terms of what you're going for. So at a place like Wonderland, I mean, everything is kind of down to design standard, right? So the menu will look like this, and the sign on the wall that tells you to line up here is going to look like that, and that would fall under that umbrella.
Yeah. And then on the technical services, those are the people that are in charge of lights and sounds and all of those sort of the speaker systems and all of the things that help guide people or create the ambiance and all that sort of stuff. So technical services, their role has expanded immensely since since Halloween Haunt has started, and now the Christmas thing. And once again, has become a year-round thing. Games is its own department here, and so games at Wonderland include all of the ones where you pay your $5 to whack-a-mole, and whoever whacks the most wins the plush animals, or you're doing the ring toss and that sort of stuff. And they also have several large arcades at Wonderland. And actually, the arcades at Wonderland, they don't own the games. There's another company out there that's now owned by Cineplex. It used to be called Starburst Coins, and they supply all the games, and the games are then revenue shared on a 50-50 split. So, and it always boggled my mind that they had arcades at Wonderland. But Mike, you said they actually did well. I guess when it rained.
They do fantastically well, yeah.
Why would you go to Wonderland to play in an arcade? I don't get it. That's not mine to and then we've got merchandise and retail. And finally, park operations. So park operations here has a whole bunch of sub departments. So rides, entertainment, aquatics. What were some of the other ones, Mike?
What are they? The ground services usually falls under park operations there, I think.
Yeah. Which is different than landscaping, isn't it? Landscaping is
that's right.
More of a how things look and where
your
the,
landscaping
where the
is more of your your sort of grounds maintenance and horticulture. So in terms of tree planting and trimming bushes and flower beds, they've got millions of flower beds, right? So there's just teams of people that just that one at the main gate, that the Canada flag that's at the base of the fountain, that just that actually gets replanted so many times during the summer that that's the landscape department takes care of that. So they would be bringing in flats of flowers that they've ordered and replanting to make sure that that it looks good all year round. So yeah, your ground services is more like cleaning trash, patios, wiping down things. So
right. Okay. All right. So you guys did a pretty darn good job of getting most of these, which is impressive. It means you guys are thinking in terms of how to make a business successful. So that was excellent.
And I think, Brittany, you talked about so where do these sort of executive group sort of fall into this kind of thing? Yes, when larger, like something the size of Canada's Wonderland is going to have sort of many tiers of management, right? So it's not you don't just have the ride operator and then a manager and then that's kind of the end of it, right? That there's always at Canada's Wonderland those sort of executive groups sort of fall outside of that. So they're, these departments get lumped into everything, kind of goes from the smallest piece, right? So in, if you take something like ride operations, for example, I don't know how many rides they have in the park, but it's a lot. So you can't have one sort of group of eyes that are kind of looking over, right? So you have at that sort of the basic point at ride operations, you'd have the operator on the floor. And then they would be working in a group. So they'd be working in a team that maybe runs, 2 or 3 rides. And that team is then headed by a, group supervisor that's looking after them. And then inside an area in that park, if you looked at those sort of, and they kind of stuck to the areas, but, or sort of geographic areas in the park, because it makes it easier to manage that, the local groups around them then are then clustered into an area. So there may be 4 local groups of supervisors that are reporting up to an area supervisor who's looking after them. And then those people are, when you lump all those in together, there's I think 5 areas or 6 areas now. They would be reporting to a manager who, is typically a full-time employee, who then would be reporting up to a director who then reports to a VP. So that you end up in these sort of, you go from very small to very large and the clusters get bigger. Or so you got ride operations that falls into park operations. So then you have somebody looking after that. But then at that executive class, you'd have a VP of the operations division, which then would have much more than just park operations. So they'd have security and loss prevention and admissions and things like that all grouped within them. And then they would kind of report up to the general manager's office in there. So general manager sort of sits in kind of their own sort of realm in terms of all that. They usually don't have a lot of, like, they're not pulling the levers on the day-to-day operation of the park because they're just so far removed from it. But I think, you know, maybe that kind of answers your question as to how that sort of sits in.
Yeah, and really, when you look at what the senior management team responsibility or job is, at the end of the day, they're accountable for everything. So you have all these different departments. They're responsible for executing what the plan is. The senior management team is the ones who set the plans and then are accountable for it. So if something goes wrong, yeah, someone's responsible, but the senior management team is accountable. And there is a difference in that, right? Because they're the ones that said it could be done. So when it comes to planning, the senior management group are the ones who are looking at the strategy, or looking at the sort of the, you know, let's take the Chinese Lantern Festival at Ontario Place as an example. The decision wasn't made in a bubble. The GM did not say, yeah, let's do this. The GM sat down with the senior management team, which included the director of operations, the director of sales and retail, security, like all these, whoever was the HR, guest services, all of the different departments at Ontario Place, that the top dog, and it was thrown out as a concept. And each of those senior managers then went back to their teams and said, here's what's being proposed. Can we do it, and how can we do it? And what are the hiccups, and what are the questions that you have to make sure that we can do it, you know, successfully? And so each of those senior managers went back down the chain, because the ones who are in the trenches are the ones who actually know what's going on. And you'll find this all through your careers. If you have a senior manager who doesn't actually check with the people who are doing it, it typically goes sideways quickly. So the senior team went down, and then we brought it back up, and then the questions were asked. Where is this event going to take place? If it's the whole park, it's going to be difficult because of this, this, and this. How are we going to make sure that we are, going to be able to clear the park and have the park come back in? What are we going to do with the displays during the daytime when they're available for free as part of the daytime experience? And where's retail going to go? Where's the food and beverage going to go? And who are we going to get to do it? All those questions came back up through the senior management team, and then we started to work on solutions. And then same thing. Okay, well, here's what we think. Here's where we're going to get to. Take it back down the chain, come up with the next set of solutions, and then we opened on the first weekend with our best guesstimate of how we can make it work properly. And then after that first weekend, we all sat down as a senior management team and said, okay, what went right and what went wrong? And made adjustments on the fly. So at the end of the day, what that senior team does is they are meant to be the spokesperson or the sounding board for everyone who works for them, to make sure that their department is operating smoothly. Does that make sense? Anyway, hopefully.
Yes, that was awesome. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Okay, so at the Toronto Zoo, they've got marketing and communications, which we have finance and purchasing, human resources, safety and security, technology, group sales and education, membership, retail and food and beverage, learning and engagement, facilities and maintenance, infrastructure, conservation, wildlife care and welfare, and science, which is reproduction, welfare, nutrition assessment, and recovery. And that, I think it was Britt or someone put down research, and that sort of would fall as sort of an umbrella term for that science part in my mind. Um, learning and engagement is different than education in this model. Anyone have any idea what the differences are? Want to take a stab at it? Either go off mute or type it in the chat. Give everyone a second.
Are we talking like kind of the way that they are teaching children and stuff, like children about the zoo, and the other part will be like the training of the staff? Like those are the two that you are trying to differentiate between, or not?
No, I don't think so. Not in this case. I think the training would be up in the HR department. But you're right about the first part. The education is about set programs that they are bringing people, are selling to schools or selling to groups for an education program. So people are purchasing or coming to the zoo for a specific purpose. And in attractions, it's very, very important to have programs that people can purchase, especially schools, that fit the curriculum. Or they aren't allowed to go. If you look at, let's use the zoo is pretty easy because there's they've got built-in really cool education that they can probably put together when it comes to things like conservation and animal welfare and all of those things that are hot topics at schools. But Wonderland, it's a theme park. So how do they go about making sure that they get tons and tons of schools that come to visit them, because it's becoming less and less likely that they're able to attend unless there's an educational component. So Wonderland has done things like the physics of roller coasters is an actual education program that high schoolers can take, and and off they go. What is STEM?
STEM, the science, technology,
Oh, yes.
engineering, and mathematics. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's all about the engineering part of it,
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And then the other thing that Wonderland has done for years is they do a music festival in the spring. So all of the bands and choirs from all over Ontario get to go and perform for 15 or 20 minutes and are adjudicated, and then they're free to go play in the park for the day. So these are, the successful businesses take a look and try to figure out what the workarounds are to create some really good education type of content. So at GlowZone, we're thinking about it. Laser Quest used to have a whole education thing on lasers. They've gone under, so maybe we might have to pick that up, because we've had a couple of calls from people asking if we do have some education programming, which we do not yet. But it'll be a good way to get some additional classes to come in throughout the year to take that course, play a few games, make us some money, right?
Yeah.
So it's not bad.
Yeah.
So learning and engagement. So if education is a set program, learning and engagement is all of the things that are programs and interactive meet and greets, like meet the tortoise and those sort of things that take place during regular operating hours. So if you've gone to the zoo, you know that there's doing penguin feeding or polar bear feeding, and a big part of that is education based. You learn more about the penguins, their habitats, where they're from, what their likes and dislikes, and people are free to ask a bunch of questions. So when you've got that, that's something that kids, especially, and adults too, don't get me wrong, remember. It's like, oh man, I had no idea that took place, or that that animal did this sort of thing. So it connects the visitor to the experience and to the attraction that they're going to.
Mm-hmm. So I think the best way to kind of look at that is, that sort of education group sales part is sort of the part of the organization that's tasked towards generating revenue by tapping into the education market. So schools, school tours, those kinds of things. Whereas, yeah, the learning engagement, as Chuck said, is more about the programs that are going on inside the attraction that are not specifically catered to any one particular group or set of individuals. It's about sort of that all-encompassing sort of theme that they have. And for a zoo attraction, you know, a lot of those are moving towards that sort of more of the conservation and sort of eco learning models, as opposed to being strictly animal shows, because those are obviously, you know, they're not in sort of, we'll call it not in favor, or they're not the flavor of the month right now. So that they, you know, in order to sort of do those kinds of things, like you take examples between sort of Marineland, I guess, where, and they're taking a lot of flack in the media right now about like their sort of how they are and how their animals are held and all this other stuff. And a lot of it sort of spins out of like the model, right? That the zoo is, you know, more, you know, is focusing or positioning their animal exhibits to sort of talk about, you know, how to preserve them in the wild, as opposed to just strictly for the entertainment of the people coming to the zoo.
Yeah, and then you got African Lion Safari, which I think is one where they're all the space that the animals at African Lion Safari have is huge, even compared to the zoo. And when you go to African Lion Safari, you are basically just a spectator on what those animals are doing in their daily lives. And I know that you, in the middle of the summer, you're like, oh, I'm going to get to go see the lions, all of whom are just lying in the grass, because that's what lions do when they're well fed. They don't need to move around. Anyway, all right. CN Tower. So their departments: marketing and communications, attractions and guest services, facilities and engineering, finance, human resources, food and beverage, retail, information technology, group and corporate sales, events, and security. So the attraction is the tower itself and going up the tower, but they also have 3D rides and movie experience, like a 3D movie experience downstairs. And I think they've got a small arcade, or they used to.
That's the big thing.
Oh, Edgewalk. You're right. Edgewalk. I blocked it from my mind because thinking about that just, it's not something that I would.
Signing up for that?
No, I'm too scared.
Yeah, and there is the 360 restaurant.
Yep. That would, I agree, that would fall under an attraction and F&B, food and beverage.
Yeah,
they have they have the 360 restaurant, and they also have a sort of a quick serve cafe in the main area as well.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
And then of course, it didn't used to be this way. Like at one point in the downstairs, where now the elevator, you go in at one level, then the elevator takes you all the way down and opens you into this massive retail outlet. That used to be this really cool kids play area at one point, where and I don't know if anyone else, most of you guys wouldn't be able to do it, but Mike, do you remember going to that thing and you actually you went down rollers to get in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had pretty cool stuff down there.
I know, but
that was where the tour of the universe was too, I think, or whatever it was.
That's right. So they have reinvented themselves many times, but it was like, if you ever go to the beer store and you put your case on and you roll it across those manual rollers, that's how you got into it. You sat on basically a slide of these rollers, and we're talking like 30 40 years ago. And I could, now I look at it through an operations lens, not from the joyous kid who was like, this is the best thing ever. And from an operating standpoint, or a safety and security standpoint, how many kids got their fingers caught in that? How many kids were going down and a piece of clothing got stuck in it, and all of a sudden they're, it boggles my mind that they had that, in there.
Well, I mean, the purest example of that is if you want to look back on the Ontario Place, just look up Children's Village at Ontario Place when that existed. That's sort of
It's
would never be built today.
No, it's true,
but it was amazing.
There's a couple of really cool. Maybe we'll post that in the links. We'll try to find it and post as a link to today's thing. There's a couple of really cool documentaries 15, 20-minute things on the history of Ontario Place, but Children's Village was a death trap, and kids loved it. But the amount of the amount of daily injuries there was astronomical. Like, geez, I went. One of the times we went there, one of the kids we were there with, split his head open, and that was a common occurrence. The first aid room was basically right on site because of it was the world's first free play area with ropes and zip lines and no safety features whatsoever. It was, kids
It
are
was
meant to be
incredible.
kids and get their knees scraped and all of that kind of stuff. So that's the CN Tower is an interesting one, right? Because you're right about the restaurant. The restaurant is an attraction unto itself. It's also a separate ticketed item. So when you reserve at the 360 restaurant, you basically get you get a ride up to the tower as part of your overall dinner experience. And the rotating restaurant is an interesting concept for people. So over the course of their meal, they will have seen the entire view that the CN Tower offers. They also have a fantastic appetizer called the Tower of Seafood for like $360, which we ordered one time as a big group at Attractions Ontario, because I am the king of appetizers. Oh, it was delicious. Sorry, I digress. All right, and then Ontario Place. So
Oh no, Glow Zone.
So sorry, Glow Zone. My apologies. So Britt, this is where we're talking about. So there are no departments at Glow Zone. There's just a general manager / owner at each location. So at Glow Zone, there's 4 of us. There's 4 partners. There's myself, Ryan, Mo, and Mark. So Ryan and Mo, they're the owner operators or general managers, and Ryan's in charge of Brampton and Mo's in charge of Mississauga. So, and they, as the GM in these FECs, they are in charge of all the operations. So they are in charge of making sure facility maintenance and finance and marketing and communications, programs and events, expansion, safety and security, human resources, guest service, group sales, parties, partnerships, food and beverage, all of that sort of stuff, right? And so if you look at what the GM's in charge of here, and then you go and you look at Wonderland, with the exception of some landscaping and the big rides, we have to do the exact same thing. We just are doing the exact same thing on a much smaller scale. So when we were putting together the plans for Glow Zone 360, the 4 of us who have years and years of operating experience, in different things. So Mo and Mark are from Cineplex, and then Mo went to Putting Edge. Mark is a franchise expert, and then myself, who has both the sales side and the marketing side of things and retail from Ontario Place and the museum and all those sort of places, and Putting Edge too, because I was 10 years at Putting Edge. And Ryan, who's a Putting Edge guy, I knew Ryan when we were growing up and we were lifeguards together. And when I started at Putting Edge a gajillion years ago, and I needed some new staff, so I called him up and I said, "You want to supplement your income?" And he went right up to VP at Putting Edge. So we had all those experiences. So when we sat down, we planned out what it was going to look like. So the actual layout and planned out from through an operations lens. And an operations lens in this case was what it's going to be the best flow, what's going to give the best customer experience or guest experience, and planned out where everything was going to be within each of the spaces that we built. Where the front desk was going to be, where the redemption counter was going to be, what were the sight lines. Like, one of the things that we make sure, and this goes to training and customer, so we train the staff to be excellent at customer service, so that it is, if you see someone as they walk in, you greet them even before they get to the desks. Well, they wouldn't be able to do that if we had created it so the sight line was you can see them as they walk in. So everything that we did as we built it was built through had an operating lens on it, built for customer service. And then we built out all the processes and procedures for each of those things. And someone had put birthday parties as a department, and you're right. So that whole parties is in here, and we have a whole process. We have 4 rooms in each location, and we had to, operationalize that, stagger the start times, make sure that we're not doubling up, make sure that there's room for regular guests to come in and do the laser tag and the mini golf when there's back-to-back parties going on. It's not uncommon, hopefully we'll get there again, but on the weekend to do 40 or 50 parties over the course of a weekend. So there was just a constant rotation. And what are the expectations of the staff? How do the rooms get set up? How do we move the people around? What does the party host do? How does the party host interact? All of those sort of things which in a bigger organization is a department's responsibility, is now one person's responsibility. Well, 4 of us, but from a day-to-day operating perspective, it's one person's responsibility. And it's interesting. So a GM at a FEC is sort of like a jack of all trades from an operating perspective. Versus the bigger players where you'll have a manager who's responsible for marketing and communications, or you'll have a manager who's responsible for group sales and education, reporting up to either to a director or to the GM. In this case, it's just Ryan or just Mo who are responsible for the day-to-day operations of each of their locations. So it's every day is an adventure, and we get together as a team every couple of weeks to go through, talk about our marketing, where are we going to put our money, talk about things that are going right, things that are going wrong, making sure we have our inventory levels. So we still have to purchase the redemption items. We need to figure out expansion. Are we going to build a third one? Where are we going to build a third one? Who's in charge of making sure that they're looking for the location and getting the financing and things together? How do we get our birthday parties back, right? Because right now we're operating at 50% capacity because that's what we're allowed to, and the parties are filling up again. So how are we now going to open up more party spots without going over our capacity or without making the people who are coming feel unsafe? So there's a ton of different questions that take place when you're running a business. Part of the fun, I think, of having a smaller venue like this is you never get hung up on one thing because you're in charge of so many. One of the things that I've noticed over the years is the bigger the organization and the more specialized the person's role, and this is especially true if in my dealings at a municipal government level or a provincial government level or regional, they have one job, they have one thing that they're supposed to do, and they become ridiculously focused on that and protective of it. And what happens is that causes more roadblocks than solutions because it's their thing. And so if your job is strictly security, right? Like security in terms of kicking people out or making sure that the people are physically safe from each other and other things. When a new idea comes up, you're not looking for solutions, you're looking for problems. Unless you're a really good director who is always looking for solutions. We talked about things that with me as a sales guy and Mike as the ops guy. Mike was an ops guy that is looking for solutions, because some of the ideas that I said, okay, I just sold this, Mike, can we do it? another ops guy would have said, "Are you kidding? No, call him back. Tell him we can't do it." Right?
No, I had a choice.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, I think to further, Chuck's point, I mean, as somebody who's worked in sort of different scales of attractions, as he mentioned, at those sort of larger attractions, you have the department managers or the people sort of running in these individual areas become highly specialized, and that's a product of that. That's what needs to happen in those sort of environments, right? So as if you operated in one particular area, you didn't really get into the nuts and bolts of what was going on somewhere else. So it created these sort of interdepartmental accountabilities so that you are trusting and you are believing that the other, if you're in rides and attractions, then, you are not spending any time worrying about what admissions is doing because you have enough on your plate and your focus is, the departments are huge. So you have hundreds of staff and many things going on. And so, but you count on those other departments to do what they're tasked to do in order to build the overall success. I had a comment with somebody years ago while I was at Wet n Wild, which is a much smaller attraction than Canada's Wonderland. It has many of the same functions like we showed there in terms of what what needs to happen on a daily basis. They happened on different scales. So if you looked at a park that does 4,000 people a day versus a park that does 40,000 people a day, those scales are different, but the tasks are the same. But what I really believed and told them at the time was that being in a smaller attraction or being in a management level or a director level or whatever, or GM, yes, as Chuck said, you have to wear more hats, and it becomes, you get closer in tune to the business. It's much more entrepreneurial than working at a large attraction because you're much more in tune to what the business is doing in terms of revenues, numbers, everything else like that. So we were much more finely detailed because your expense lines aren't as big because your revenue lines aren't as big. So you're sort of playing in those margins, right? Because it's, as we talked about before, this is not a nonprofit type of industry. We're obviously trying to make money for our owner or for the company or for anyone else like that. And so you do get this sort of closer sense of what is happening right at the sort of ground level. What are the sort of the tiny little ticks and numbers and stuff that are rolling in about how much is this, in an attraction sense, at Canada's Wonderland, it was, if something broke, we fixed it. At Wet n Wild, if something broke, we still fixed it, but we had to consider how much is the cost of this repair and what is it going to do to affect the bottom line. And that was a different conversation that happened. And it's not that you ever defer those, or you'd have to look and say, can I defer it because it's not a safety related thing or those kinds of things, or what are we going to have to do to make up for this problem? So if we had to fix something that cost $100,000, then where is that money going to, how does that sort of circulate through the entire business as opposed to at a larger operation such as Canada's Wonderland? You have a budget and you work within that, but sometimes you're like, well, we just got to spend it, right? So those are very different considerations as you sort of work through it. And I think as an operator, one of the best schools or places to learn all those bits and pieces is to really work with those smaller operators, those smaller attractions, because you get the foundations or the fundamentals of those concepts without the scope. And then you can apply those things on larger and larger things. And then that's where you sort of at the big places, you have to drill down to those kind of, last little bits or the biggest sort of slices of the pie there.
So any questions or comments about what we just talked about?
Is it okay to ask a question that is not related, but out of curiosity?
Of course.
Now we're talking about the glow zone. And the question is, you have 2 locations.
Yeah.
When you started the second one, did you find that there was some construction kind of mistake that, not mistake, but like you can make it better, area for improvement in the second location?
Yep.
Did
we-
that happen?
Oh yeah. Yep. One of the things that we did at the first glow zone, we were not happy with the company that did the mini golf itself. We thought that the mini golf course is not a putting edge. Like the amount of time and money that goes into a putting edge course is crazy in terms of it's actually landscaped a putting edge course. So we had a vision of making it more open because we really wanted the social connection so that people come in groups of 4 or 8 or whatever, they could actually be talking with each other. But when the course was done, we thought that it had a lack of ups and downs, undulations and different things like that. The artwork was spectacular. So what we did in the second one is we had our hand in the development of what the course design was going to be more for Mississauga, so that there's a lot more challenge, a lot more specialty type of holes with some ups and downs. It could still be improved, but it's better than the first one. And then we hired the artists separately so that that they came and did not just the mini golf course but the whole building. And then on the laser tag side, we did pretty well, but it was a different configuration. So in Brampton, where there's one high point, so people can go up and tag people from one location at a perch level. In this one, because it's more of a square box, we did 4. So now there's 4 different places that people can go up and down, and we're finding that people's enjoyment of that is better too. And then the other thing we did, and this is so in the party rooms, we ended up getting one of those freestyle machines, and each of the parties they just go up and they get their drinks. But in Brampton, we didn't think we were getting one of those. When we built it, we thought we were going to do pictures of soft drinks coming out of the kitchen. So the machine now sticks out from the wall. And in Mississauga, what we did, knowing that we were going to go with a freestyle machine, we actually recessed it back in so it's its own separate area, and it doesn't take up any of the walking space back and forth. So there's always learning curves, and that's a really good question.
Now we come to the question that is related to the lesson this time. In this case, which department is, like, let's say, looking for areas of improvement? Like, since in the on a smaller scale, you're doing everything, right? So like, if we are talking like departments, will it be like each department will look for their own faults, or will be there a department to look for the faults, kind of?
That's a great question, and this is probably going to get into a little bit of what we're going to our next step. But yeah, Mike, why don't you start with it? But I think it starts with departments, but it works its way up, and because then we start talking about interdepartmental cooperation. Oh, we lost you, Mike. No. Oh, now I can hear you. Talk now. I think we can hear you. He's gone. Okay. So I'll take a stab at it, and when Mike comes back, he can put his 2 cents in. So when it comes to that, yes, every department, and this is where you got an area manager out of Wonderland. They are seeing what's going on and are looking for areas of improvement. Then they'll talk with their peers from other areas, and hopefully they can actually change the operations and push it.
Can you hear me now?
We
Sorry.
can. Go ahead, Mike. Continue on. We can hear you. We can't hear you. There he is.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go.
All right, hold on. I don't know what is going on right now.
That's
So-
all right.
Give me 1 second.
All right.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, you can hear me. Okay.
Yes.
So I think, you know, Naf, the question of like who's responsible for continuous improvement, it certainly in the sort of departmental range, everybody owns that. That's sort of a, you know, that's not something that's unique to any one department. Usually those, you know, those conversations, you know, happen, they should happen all the time. You know, in an attraction, you should always be looking as an operator or whatever your level of operation is, you're always assessing, right? You're always looking at, you know, what went on. I think in the seasonal parks, you always had this, you know, and I said, you know, one of the things I liked about seasonal operations was that you always had a chance to start over every year. So you were able to sort of, you know, take what you'd learned, look at the overall um, sort of operation and make, you know, determinations or assessments of what was going on. When you're talking about larger improvements in terms of, you know, like design or quality, and when we, you know, those things happen, yeah, at a much higher level up at sort of that sort of design and construction phase. And it, you know, it was very frequent that, you know, when we were building a ride at, you know, Canada's Wonderland, that someone already had it. It wasn't like they were unique pieces that, you know, there was a park somewhere else that owned this particular attraction or did it. So there was some research about, you know, and you were lucky if it was inside your own chain because you got a lot more information, but there was a lot of sort of research gathering. So going and looking at existing attractions or similar attractions, assessing where you think you can make improvements over that design, or getting information from those operators and saying, if we had the chance to do it over again, you know, we would have made this line longer because, you know, it fills up all the time, or we need more storage because of all these things going on. So those things happened at sort of that design level. But the sort of daily, you know, in and out of the operation, you handled that at, you know, each department was kind of owns that process, because you're running those things as, you have to think about it as like sub businesses is within a large business. So your business may be, you know, food and beverage, and your task, your as a manager, is to make that as, you know, efficient, profitable, effective as you possibly can. Or ride operation, same thing. You're looking at, you know, you're not looking at profit, but you're looking at throughput, safety, efficiency, those things. So you're always fine tuning that and sort of, you know, looking at those sort of situations and learning from your days. So if you have a, you know, if you have a day where, you know, things go particularly well, then you assess what caused that. And if you have days that where, you know, you had issues, or your guests are giving you comments to saying that they liked it, but, you know, there's these things, then that's where you sort of, you know, making those on the fly adjustments to your plan, or how the attraction operates so that you can meet those needs. Because in the end, it's all about sort of making people, you know, they happy at your attraction, or making things work the most effectively towards whatever goal you're trying to achieve in that area.
Awesome. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so if there's no other questions for right now, and of course there's lots of time afterwards, it's 9:32. Let's take 8 minutes and take a break, get yourselves a coffee, go to the washroom, all of those good things. Hopefully that was it didn't feel like an hour and a half that we just flew through. So hopefully it didn't feel like an hour and a half to you guys, or it didn't feel like 6 hours. And we'll come back at 9:40. And once again, when you get back, just type in that you're back, and we'll get started.
All right. How's that? Am I back on here, Chuck?
You are, and I can hear you.
Oh, that's good. Gosh. I don't know why it drops it.
Well, how'd you break your computer?
Well, the display, the screen on it,
Yeah.
just I was using it and then it started flaking out. Like the picture it'd flicker and bars and lines and stuff like that. So I had to take it to Apple and because it was unusable, and they're replacing the display on it, some component failure with it or something like that.
Okay, well, at least it is, are they fixing it for free?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I had that new couch I bought that's in the living room, the TV room. Trish went to sit down, and I guess the arm must be press board, not real wood. Boom, right through it. So we've got to get that. So, all right. So Brittany's back. Everyone else back? Just type it in the chat. Lizzie's back. All right. Knopf is back. From the current. Okay. All right. Well, let us continue on our merry way here. Of course, this is only going to be for a second. Okay, so our next activity today is to start to think about what is operations responsibility within departments. So I've got a Padlet that I'm going to share in a second, and we've listed 4 departments: marketing and communications, human resources, retail, guest services. So what we want to do is just take about 10 minutes to jot down how operations plays a role in each of these departments. So this isn't an easy task, and we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna let you guys type away, and Mike and I will continue to chat about some of the things that we've seen over the years, and so it's see how we do. And then we'll have a more fulsome discussion about it. So I'm going to stop sharing that, and then I'm going to go back here. Make sure that I've got the right. There we go. Okay. All right. So let me just put this link in the chat, which is where. There we go. All right, so you guys can link into that, and off we go. So just before we went on break, we were talking about, the bigger the department, the more people sort of take ownership of it, and this was something that I found to be very, very true at Ontario Place with the IT department. And Mike can probably attest to this, but regardless of from a service standpoint or a efficiency standpoint or whatever, when it came to the technology behind it. So on the admission systems, for instance, it's like, hey, there's this great new admission system. We should take a look at it. And the IT person was always no, because it would have made it so that the actual department had more control over the system and being able to make changes than the IT person did. We were working at Ontario Place well into the days of Windows and Outlook and that sort of thing, and we were still using Lotus and Lotus Notes.
I remember Lotus Notes. I hated that so much.
Yeah, it was insane. And so this was a it was he was a good guy, and he was so funny. But he had been working at Ontario Place from the day it had opened in 71, and had worked his way up, and was now the head of IT, but hadn't really got out of the 90s in terms of the technology services. And I'm just trying to, there's so many crazy stories. Mike, you must have one.
Oh, with just in terms of like an example of like how
of how how someone who was so
ridiculously
focused that it was holding things up.
Well, I think, you know, the biggest example that you talked about was, you know, just in terms of, you know, systems, and that, you know, the systems that parks and attractions use is, you know, over the last 20 years have changed. I mean, when I got started, web ticketing was kind of one of those cool niche programs, you know, where you're like, and we can sell tickets online, and everybody was like, you know, it sounded cool, but at the same time, it really wasn't it wasn't our primary mode of ticketing. You know, parks and attractions were set up with the main gate with admissions booths, and you know, that's the way it was done. That, you know, people were going to show up on the day of, they were going to have to line up, get, you know, buy their tickets, get through that experience, and then get in. If you said that now in 2021, I mean, I would say, you know, most people want to buy their tickets online and at home, and you know, or even have it on their phone, right? Not print stuff out. You know, we had an antiquated web ticketing system for so long, and there was just a lot of resistance to change it because some of it I think was just fear, but some of it was just that that department was so focused on what they had, and in terms of what they liked their systems because they knew them very well and they didn't want to change them. And you know, as Chuck mentioned, that sort of gets you stuck in a rut. And I think, you know, as an attractions operator, you have to continually you need to evaluate what you have and look for better, because someone else around you or another competing attraction is probably doing the same thing. And you know, in an industry that is very much focused on, you know, fun and experience, and you know, making people have, you know, sort of that sort of best time ever kind of thing, or have do something memorable, one of the focuses needs to be on that sort of ease of use, you know, that sort of seamless, you know, move from one area to the other. And you know, as a reverse of, you know, what we sort of experienced in one park where there was hesitancy to change the technology and make it better, you know, at like a park like Wet and Wild, we spent a lot of time, you know, talking about just that concept. And you know, we looked at that from your couch to, you know, we called it like, you know, from your couch to the chaise lounge experience. You know, how did you, you know, from the point of time where you decided to come to the park to where you bought the ticket to the seamless, you know, we want you to get to the parking booth, have your stuff, get to the gate, have your things, and so that there's no hopping from line to line, and that the experience from you getting from, you know, your house to sitting on a deck chair watching your kids play in the water areas, you know, had to become painless. That, you know, it just happened, and yes, there were steps you had to go through, but they didn't involve pain. And so that, you know, but that meant sometimes that we needed to make our own systems change, or get rid of things that we were doing, or things that people were really holding on to in terms of, you know, sort of this we have to do, and you know, examining the whys, and taking some risks in your, you know, what technology or product you had, and just kind of developing that out. And you know, some of those things are born out of looking at other attractions, like I said before, where you research, or you know, going to shows like IAAPA and looking and seeing what the newest and greatest technology is. There's a lot of literature too in the industry you look at, and you see those things and you're like, why can't we do that here? And then it's about build that out. What does it require? What are the issues? move through that. But yeah, with Wet and Wild, we got to a very good process where once you bought everything, you could get everything you wanted, your parking, your locker, your this, your food, everything, and it was all done. And a lot of it was about just kind of looking at the parent, looking, saying, okay, well, where are the points of irritation, even before you settle down in the park, and say, okay, well, you're in a big lineup for this, or you're buying your ticket, or you don't know where to go, or all those things. So you just made it like just breeze right in, you're all done, you're sitting down. And yeah, we've taken our revenue cuts out of all those different things, but the guest that's coming to the park is really sort of feeling that sort of ease of experience, and there's less hassle to the whole process. But yeah, that IT experience that at Ontario Place was difficult because it really did set us back, and we had to sort of some of the things that we could have done easier, we had people had to find workarounds or do things that weren't exactly what you wanted to do, and that made more work for somebody else, or didn't give you the information or the control over the product that you really wanted.
Yeah. Remind me to go back to that your analogy at Wet and Wild, because I think it's going to tie nicely into what we're doing right here. All right, so you guys feel free to keep writing stuff down, but we've got a really good list going here. So what I like about what you guys are writing down is you're really getting that we need to, every department has to operationalize something. So in marketing and communications, you need to plan and execute your campaigns. So you need to figure out, from a marketing and communication standpoint, what is the message? When are we going to put that message out there? Who's our audience? How are we going to reach them? And then we need to actually make that happen. It's the making that happen part that's the operations of it. Partnerships, same thing. Who fits, and somewhere down here we have brand management. They go hand in hand in a lot of cases. Who fits our brand as partners? How do we bring them in? What is it that they need? What do we need from them? What are the activations? How do we make the activations happen? On what days, and and that sort of thing. Social media is can be set in campaigns, but then on social media there's also an interaction. So not only do you have the campaign and you're setting out your messages, and you got your stack adapt going, and everything, all your messages are going out, but then you have to have someone who's monitoring the interactions and responding to them, both positive and negative, to make sure the levels of engagements are up. So how operationalizing that, who's in charge of that, how do you schedule their time, who's going to be the one at 2 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning who's responding to any overnight comments? And those are the pieces of the puzzle there. The financing, right? You set your budget, so then you have to plan everything to to the budget. How much are we going to spend on this campaign? What is the ROI? What is the expected ROI? Why are we doing this campaign? And once you execute it, how are the finances going to go back and forth? Brand management, market research are all part of it. So market research, if you're doing it in-house, then you have the operations, like at a Wonderland, where they had the people out at the front, just as you came in the gate. I'm not sure if anyone else experienced it, but they ask you, where you're from and all this sort of stuff. And as a teenager, you would make up where you were from and give them postal codes from BC and all sorts of fun places, which now that I'm in the business, I think, man, that really sucked for me, because I really want to know who's actually there, not a bunch of crap. So you need to figure out what information do you want, and then you got to figure out how you're going to get it. And it's getting that information and analyzing it as part of the operations. Past market evaluation, website management, and IT support. It's all in there. So when it comes to implementing the plans that are in there for marketing and communication, it's that implementation. It's that then the analysis of the successes and all of those sort of things is part of an of the overall operations of that department. Mike, you want to do the HR stuff?
Yeah. So human resources, what are we looking at? Recruiting, I think that's the number one, obviously, where you have to operationalize that plan. And, examples are, this, how many staff do you need? And so that's going to dictate what you've got going on. At a case like Wonderland that's hiring 3,000 staff, their operational plan will be different than, maybe a small attraction that needs a couple dozen, or maybe even less than that of staff. Example for something like that is, at Wet n Wild, our biggest operational issue for recruitment was the where part. We needed to hire about 500 staff to operate that park. Between all the different departments, and the where part became an issue of, yes, where are we going to get these people from and where are we going to do it? But then at the very sort of most basic level is, back in the day where we actually interviewed in person, the process for us doing it, in terms of those, where you're going to do job fairs and group interviews, one-on-one interviews, all that stuff had to be figured out. And when you're hiring for volume, typically you're doing the group interviews and the sort of job fair bit, but that park was not built or intended to host those kinds of things. It's an outdoor water park that operates in the summer, and we're doing our recruitment in March. So we're not going to definitely do it outside. And there weren't very many large indoor spaces in the water park other than the bathroom and the change rooms. And that didn't seem like a pretty fitting place to hold your recruiting sessions. So we needed to sort of look for different operating plans. So we, went on a model of sort of rotating job fairs that happened at remote locations. So going to community center and booking that for the day, or we went to the Woodbridge Soccer Center and rented a space from them, and then we partnered with sort of the youth employment offices, and they let us have their space so we could do these things. And that was how you had to operationalize a recruiting plan, and it even went to, how do you reach these people? Was it a social media campaign? Are you going to job boards? Are you doing those kinds of things? When you look at policies and procedures, every attraction is going to have them, and you're talking things, that are simple as, how the staff need to look. So what does their uniform look like? What are your grooming guidelines in terms of, your brand standard, procedures for, all kinds of stuff, even just the simple process of onboarding a staff member. And we talk about onboarding, and we'll, I think later in the course, we talk about those issues, but, when you hire somebody, how do you get them from the point of hire to the point where they're ready to go and perform their job? And so you have to create a process for that, to get them from A to Z. And those things, happen within the HR department typically. Training, like I said, continued on, right? About what sort of training are you delivering in human resources? Is it location specific? Is it more sort of generic because there's lots of operating departments and they're going to handle that? Union or labor relations. Yeah, you could deal with that. An example, Ontario Place was a government run or owned facility. So all of the staff were unionized, which is, not typical in the industry, but it certainly happens and it depends on your jurisdiction. But that was something that added a new layer of sort of complexity to the system. And so in dealing with those, when you made your plans and you had to sort of operationalize things, you needed to take in consideration what the collective agreement was, and whether that allowed you to do those certain things. And, sometimes you had to sort of alter your plan or do something that was sort of less ideal because you needed to fit those things. Obviously employee satisfaction. So yeah, in season, what are you doing to maintain the satisfaction of your staff, so that they're happy? Because, obviously happy staff, happy guests. So what are you doing? Or, you have people that are, creating, sort of incentive programs or motivational things. You know, place like Wonderland, they do quite a bit, you know, like where you're doing, you know, staff parties or, you know, riding games nights or things like that. So it sort of trickles down and, you know, what sort of incentive programs are going to be. Yeah, providing, you know, support, advocate for the staff. So you need procedures in for that. So, you know, if you're a small attraction and the relationship between, you know, management and staff is a lot closer because there's only 8 of you, then, you know, some of those things may be a little less formal, because it's more like just, you know, my door is open, please, you know, talk to me. Whereas if you have a large organization where that has thousands of employees, then you need to have structure in place, right? So that people know where to go to get the support, how to reach it, you know, what are the sort of the rules for those kinds of things. Yeah, that kind of stuff. And then, yes, the provincial standards. So anybody, no matter who you are, needs to look at the Employment Standards Act, right? And what are the rules that you need to follow as an employer in this province? So, you know, and how do you bake that into your plans? Similar to how you would deal with those sort of collective agreement issues, but you need to, you know, the provincial standards just, you know, could be as simple as, you know, how many, if I know I need to give somebody a break, you know, within every 5 hours, then, you know, when I build my staffing plans, then I need to have that accounted for so that I don't have, you know, that counter that, you know, I have somebody placed on isn't vacant for 30 minutes every 5 hours. And those are definitely operational plans. So, okay.
Perfect. And then on the retail side, we've got sales management. So that, now if you're talking about the actual operations of each of the retail stores, so managing the staff, managing the transactions and that sort of thing.
No, I mean, because we're talking retail, I thought like product sales management. We're talking about how many items came in, how many items went out.
Yeah.
stuff like
So
that.
yeah. So sales, logistics, product research, it sort of fits into that, and the data analysis and design. That's an important one. That, you know, if you're, especially when you're doing branded merchandise, it's what's going to work. You need to have your research in there. You need to understand who your clients are and what they're going to purchase, and how do you brand it. Accounting is important. Shipping and receiving, yep, is good. And then the only other one would be sort of that the actual retail operations. Where do you, product placement? Where do you put the products within the store? How much is on the walls versus how many what are you going to be putting on, you know, the standalone shelves that are, you know, that make up the store location? Where is your, you know, where are your cash registers? What are your, you know, what are your procedures, SKUs, all that kind of good stuff is in there. Yeah, procurement exactly is an important part of that. And in a lot of organizations, there's procurement policies that are in place too. So you got to make sure you're following those policies. Perfect. And then guest services, Michael.
Okay, so yeah, guest services. Yeah, you're talking membership. I'm guessing, you know, we're talking more about like how we deal with them, Britt, or like the selling, and what were you thinking there?
Yeah, kind of just like managing them, I guess, like the accounts and stuff like that, the levels of membership and those kind of things.
Yeah, certainly. I think, yeah, I mean, depending, and yet again, right, your scale will dictate, you know, what you're doing with it. But if you're selling some sort of membership, then at some level, there's somebody that has to deal with that, right? And it's whatever perks you're getting, or maybe, you know, that you're getting, you know, these members are, you know, have special privileges or things like that within the facility or the attraction, and or maybe there's different levels of outreach with them. You know, on the sort of most basic level, you know, your seasons pass, you know, type, you know, guest, you know, what, you know, obviously you need an infrastructure in place to manage all of that. And, you know, that could cross number of departments, from, you know, information technology to admissions to, you know, everybody else. And, you know, how you reach those people, how you grow it, and how do you make sure they're satisfied. And parks like to gain, they like to create lists of people. Part of it is about, sort of helping your marketing department, as Chuck said, getting that information of where people come from and how to reach them. And, some of it's just direct marketing, right? Going to right to people and saying, hey, we know that you are interested in this product. And so, here's something else we think that would fall in line with that. Yeah, your satisfaction analysis. Now it's complicated because you're not getting just information from one sort of channel. When sort of, I'll say sort of in the early days of the pre-internet, Yelp reviews, Google reviews type stuff, a lot of your information came from like a counter or phone room type of thing, right? So where people are calling into your park, and where are they calling into, what kind of volume you had. Like Canada's Wonderland has a whole call center, right? As opposed to, Glow Zone, that's, you're just going to call Glow Zone and someone's going to pick up, right?
And hope they give you the right information.
Exactly. But when you have to collect and manage all this data. So, we had at like at the bigger parks, there's a lot of databases that are created because you have someone who's collecting that information about, this guest is not satisfied about this issue, and here's how it was tried to be resolved at the park or whatever, but it may have to get rerouted to somebody in an area that is better suited to answer the question or to provide assistance. So it kind of filters through that, whereas more direct might be where we're talking to somebody. But now you're looking at all these different channels too, so someone needs to aggregate all these scores or things like from Google and all that kind of stuff. Like at my current employer right now, we use a thing called the Net Promoter Score. So they have to get all that data from different surveys and different things and create these scores. Guest services, they could be looking at admissions. They, sometimes depending on your situation, they may be two different entities or they may be smashed into the same one. Complaints handling, you need you need somewhere for people to reach out to, right? And that kind of goes from that satisfaction analysis about how do people reach your attraction, and how do you deal with things when things go wrong. There's a lot of there were a lot of viral videos this year, like about Canada's Wonderland, about rides being stopped and all that kind of stuff, and I looked at it and said, well, that's no big deal. It happens about 40 times a day all day because that's what they're supposed to do. But there's on the ground, there's a million and one things that go wrong in a day, right? So how do you fix those things, or who's responsible for managing those relationships with your customers? And that, in the Glow Zone experience, that may be that same guy, that GM that's doing all of these things is also taking feedback from different people and calling them back and saying, hey, I'm sorry that your experience didn't go as well as you'd hoped, and I'm going to fix this for you. Or at a larger park, it may be that, somebody's going to champion those issues, and that's their job, is to deal with that. And then they're going to go to the individual departments and sort of say, okay, well, I've got this, and you need to sort of internally, you need to look at this complaint and see where you fell down, but you're not going to have direct contact with the guest. We're going to deal with that. We're going to deal with, if we're going to give them any compensation or we're going to do anything about that. Rewards program, same stuff. Maintaining records, that kind of falls into the same bit about just, how do you compile that information? How do you create these systems so that you can understand what your guests are telling you as an attraction, and that it's all scalable, but at some level you need to be able to take this information and improve or react to the things that people are telling you, because certainly there's somebody else out there in the industry that's going to be doing that, and they're going to do it better than you. And if that happens, then that obviously going to affect your bottom line. So you're looking at all that kind of stuff about how do we create these processes to retain and to keep guests coming to the park or the attraction.
Perfect. So my question to you guys is, can any of these departments work in a silo? Are any of these departments standalone? What are your thoughts on that? Either in the chat or you can go off mute and chat with us.
I don't think that that is possible.
Pardon me?
I don't think that working alone is possible for any of these departments, not at all. I mean,
And
because there should be some kind of coordination because each result depends on the other, let's say, will arrange for the others future movement in a way.
I, and I agree, and it looks like Susanna and Britt all agree. And yes, they're all departments are interconnected. And let's use Mike's example of from the couch to the chaise lounge as the example of that, because it actually touches all of these um, you know departments. So marketing and communications is working in tandem with probably at the senior management level, and the goal of marketing and communications in this case is to engage the right people at the right time to convince them to get off the couch and into the chaise lounge. The key message in this case was, this is how hassle-free and easy it is going to be for you, and that's the campaign message. So that's what they're pushing out there. They are telling the right people at the right time. They are saying, you can come in and it's going to be a breeze, an absolute breeze. If they did that all by themselves, and the person showed up and there's a 30-minute lineup to get in the door, and there was no signage to let them know where to go, and there's no chaise lounges for them to sit in, the whole thing falls apart. And the negative reviews from that could kill the attraction or kill the season. So now you've got HR. Well, let's go over to guest services, and guest services are in charge of, in this case, the admissions and the complaint handling and the satisfaction and all that sort of stuff. So guest services is working with marketing and communications, and marketing has said, we need the guests to have this hassle-free environment. And the admissions department thinks about it and says, okay, well, the best way for us to do that is, why don't we put together this VIP ticket that includes you show up and you're going to have you're going to have branded towels on your own chaise lounge, and you're going to have a separate line to go through, a bypass line, and there's going to be footprints along the walkway, much like the zoo or somewhere like that, that takes those VIP guests who are getting this experience from the admissions right to where their chaise lounge is. And that's gonna be a really good experience, and it's going to deliver on the promise that it's going to be hassle-free. Well, now retail's involved, because now retail's like, okay, they would have consulted with retail and said, what's your hottest items? Well, in this case, it's the towels, because people can never have too many towels. So they say, okay, we'd like this experience to include towels, and we expect to sell X amount. So now retail is responsible for procurement of that, making sure it's shipped in, and then also making sure that those towels are available for someone from guest services or whoever the staff member is who's in charge of this specific program, to make sure that those towels are on those chairs. And then you get HR. HR has to make sure that you can't just go out and recruit people. You have to understand what you're recruiting for. So HR is now talking with the guest services department, saying, what kind of people, what are you looking for? Well, I'm looking for regular admission staff, but I'm also looking for some people who are going to provide this higher end VIP experience. And here's what I need from them. They need to be outgoing. They need to be attentive. They need to, not shy away from, trying to just project all that we're trying to be. They need to talk to retail. Oh, we've got this new program in place. I'm going to need an extra staff member whose job it's going to be to, coordinate with guest services to find out how many of these VIP experiences have been sold every day, to make sure the towels are set up properly. So they're going to have to, be moving around the park and doing all this sort of stuff. So HR needs to touch all of those departments before they can even put a job out there or interview for any of the jobs. And so you're right. Everything is completely interconnected. And let's use Knopf's idea of partnerships under marketing and communications. And this is, in some instances where parks aren't working as a well-oiled machine, these partnerships can be problematic. So marketing says, Audi comes into Ontario Place and says, we want to sponsor the fireworks this year. And we're going to give you a bunch of money to do that, but here's what we want in return. We want to have 3 Audis on site up on their raised platforms, right where some of the fireworks are going off. We want to have test drive ability on this day and this day. And marketing, if they are doing it in a bubble, says yes, let's do it, because they're thinking, okay, I've got a budget of $100,000 that I have to make in partnerships, and this is 50,000 of it. Well, the issue then becomes, unless you check with operations, what happens is suddenly the Audi starts putting up their car up on this platform, and security comes and says, this is on a fire route. You can't put this car here. And then your guest service and admissions people say, this is a sight line where people are going to be watching the fireworks from. You can't put this car here. So what has to happen to make that partnership success? Because now suddenly the cars aren't where they wanted the cars to be, and they say, there's a concert on the 2 days that you said that they're going to do test drives in this parking lot. That parking lot is going to be full. They can't test drive the cars on these days. And suddenly your $50,000 investment is gone or lessened because that partner didn't get what they were promised. So say the marketing side, when they're doing partnerships, it's the same thing. They actually all work together. And then they say, okay, this is what Audi wants. And then all those departments say, okay, well, we can't go here, but we can go here. And what we can do is we can now, the entertainment, we'll program a little stage where some entertainment to draw more people over so that they're seeing the music performance, but they're also seeing the Audi. And doing all these things to do workarounds to make sure that partnership works out really well. Does that make sense? And I love that you guys are already there, because we're doing sort of a sneak peek into next week. I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to go back to our slide deck. I'll share that. I'm going to leave it on this. So based on everything we just did, is this course definition still valid? The process is involved with providing the very best guest service and experience in a safe, effective, and profitable manner. So based on this, does the definition still work, or do we need to add a few words or change it around? What's everyone's thoughts here? Because when I started, when Mike and I did our pre-chat this morning, I was like, well, I think that still holds true. That holds true. But now that we've been talking just through this whole process, I think that we can actually add a couple of words here. What do you think those words should be? Any ideas?
Frankly speaking, I still like it. It summarizes everything. I mean, it's just like sweet and short, and every word has like a ton of meanings behind it.
Yep. Okay, but let's just go back to what we just talked about and what Susanna's got in the chat there.
So we will be adding cooperatively or something?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking uh, effective, uh, coordinated, or I can't think. We got to think of the right word, but that's exactly right. What we just talked about, just you guys just figured out when we were talking there, and even in some of those examples that you were putting down on that list, it doesn't happen in a silo. Everyone has to be working together. It has to be a coordinated, um, a coordinated all of attraction approach. Um, Mike, what are your thoughts on what I'm saying here?
Yeah, I think where you bake it in, maybe we're talking about, these are the processes involved with providing the very best guest service, and I think that still holds true. I think one of the ways we can kind of add to that definition is just say that these are processes involved in a sort of a whole park or whole attraction sort of coordinated fashion. And so we're not thinking about sort of this sort of small a attraction type thing. Now we're talking about the whole entity, whether it's 3 million people a year or 30 people a year, that that sort of operations is it's all of these things, but it's also a it's something that's happening in conjunction with other people all the time. You're taking all these different facets, and you're not living in this sort of narrow tunnel visioned kind of thing. So maybe, yeah, you want to add in like a something just in a coordinated fashion or something like that to the end, to kind of give it a little bit more of that sort of that boost, because that's really kind of what we've led to today in the conversation, in where those examples are coming, is that yes, operations is those functions, but they happen because that there's multiple coordinations that are going on, or there are conflicting sort of responsibilities that have to be considered. Even if you're the you're the glow zone and you don't have a board table, you're not sitting at the boardroom when you have your meetings. It's like there's 2 or 3 people in the chat, and that all these things intersect, that you have to kind of look at all of those bits and pieces and say, okay, well, yes, from from one standpoint, from marketing standpoint or from admissions, this is the very best way we can handle this, but it may not, that may not apply to someone else. And they're saying, well, yeah, but if you do this, it's going to create issues for us in terms of technology, or in terms of rides and attractions. People saying, well, yeah, it would be great to just cram everybody on, but we actually have to follow some sort of level of rules here, and we can't admit everybody because there are restrictions involved or things like that. So there's always something, or that that back to the helicopter story, and that we'd love to give everybody a helicopter ride, but
we need a fleet of them.
Yeah, and that's just not going to happen, because we have access to one helicopter, not several, or those kinds of things. So
yeah. So does that read okay, guys? The holistic or the coordinated processes. I think that adds in what we just talked about. Is that whenever we talk about holistic, as in everyone, I always want to put a W in front of it, but I don't think that's the way to spell it. Like whole.
I believe your spelling is correct.
Okay, well that is good. Okay.
Holistic, it sounds very I'm gonna say, like, eco-friendly,
Yeah,
I'm gonna go to a healthy planet and get
that's right.
vitamins or something like that.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. And I'm glad that we got to it. That's kind of neat. All right, so we've got 35 minutes left. So let's talk about assignment number 1, which I've got a working sheet for you. So the first assignment will be in DC Connect. You can download a worksheet, And the whole notion here is you're going to pick 2 attractions, and we've provided you a list of them. You're going to describe each attraction by the physical attributes and themes. You're going to describe the area and departments that each attraction needs to operationalize. You're going to compare each attraction and describe how, from an operating standpoint, they're similar, and then you're going to describe how they are different. So that's the assignment through the week. And then next week, you're going to report your findings to the class, which will lead to more discussions, and then talk a lot more about making these connections about how operations fits into this holistic approach. So from a presentation expectation, probably 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes in length. You can include visual components, but don't have to, which can be sent in advance to me if you don't want to share your screen. You should clearly answer the 4 questions posed in the last slide. And since we're going to be discussing and drawing comparisons from the presentations as a whole, we're going to leave all questions, comments until after all the presentations are complete, because some of you might pick the same ones and go from there. So there's 2 different parts to this. And let me just stop sharing this, and then I'll pull up the other one. See if I can find it. Here we go. Nope. There we go. Share that one. So what I've done is I've created a worksheet. And the reason for that is that the actual assignment has been done as a quiz. And I'm not completely familiar with DC Connect, but from what I would gather is once you've submitted the quiz, then it is, it's gone and you're going to be presenting on it. So I've created this worksheet for you. So basically you can fill in all of your answers, get everything done the way you want it to look in terms of the actual content of each of the answers. And then you can cut and paste it into the quiz and then submit the quiz. But then you'll still have this to talk about for the presentation next week. And I'm going to stop there and ask if there's any questions about this first assignment. I'm sure there will be, because it's the first assignment.
I would like if you can add a word limit, like minimum maximum thing, because that will put us in like the right perspective, like what is required exactly.
Okay, I hadn't thought of that, because as you can tell, I'm a rambler, but yes, I think
because sometimes we end up like writing, I don't know, pages, and what was requested was just sweet and short, like a paragraph. And
that's right. Okay.
Well, we're certainly more in the paragraph than novel category of answers.
Yes. Okay. So I'll put it in here right now. So for this one, let's try for a maximum of 250. Oh, geez, that's a lot. Well, we'll just say 250. I think for all these, they're short. Like they can be lists. You can just list them all out for this. So that is that okay? Is 250 sort of a medium size? Anyone else?
Are you setting the 250 as a minimum or a maximum?
Max.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you can do it, in 100, that's fine.
What if we go over? I tend to write, I mean, not a lot, but like for me, 250 is a little small. I always tend to go over that kind of word range.
That's fine. You will not be docked for any extra words unless it's a novel.
Okay.
But
about the attraction name, I mean, 250, what we are talking exactly about, like, because it says pick 2 of the following Ontario attractions. Is just the name, or are we supposed to be like talking, giving some idea about it in 250 words?
No. So the reason I've got this here and here is so that we know which attraction you're describing. So you have to pick two. So let's say you pick Canada's Wonderland and CN Tower. So here you would write Canada's Wonderland,
Okay.
right? And then you would actually start here with your descriptors. This place
Great.
rocks, right?
So we'll do 2 sets of these. That's what I understand.
Yeah, so where the attractions names are, all we want you to do is write down which attraction you're describing, because we'll know. So the next one would be CN Tower here, right? If those were the two you were picking, because those are the ones we were talking about today. So that's just so that Mike and I know which ones you have chosen, and so we'll know that your description matches. So this is the talking about the physical descriptors of Canada's Wonderland. The next part is the areas of Canada's Wonderland, because they go this way. This is a stupid view. If I just did my view.
No, now it's perfectly clear. Yeah,
Oh,
thank
okay.
you. Now I am like it. It makes sense all.
Okay. Does everyone else okay with that? Understand that part? And then for the last two questions, we already know which two you've chosen. And then you're going to be talking about what are the similarities and then what are the differences between the two. And that's about it. It's really just to make sure that you guys have a good understanding of what we've talked about in these first 3 weeks, and hopefully it hasn't been dry. We've tried to make it as fun as possible. This is your own personal worksheet. What you'll do is the other part is set up as a quiz. So I will make sure that right now it's hidden. I will unhide it. So what you'll do is you'll write everything in here. This is your worksheet, and then you'll just copy each of the texts from each of the boxes and put it into the corresponding response on the quizzes. So
yeah, so the reason that Chuck did that, and you mentioned before, is because when you submit it may disappear and then you don't have access to it. And then when we're talking next week in class, we want you to have access to what you've done here so that you can speak to it. So it's basically having a copy of what you submitted.
Yeah.
Is that right, Chuck?
That is right. What I'd like to do is, I think I've made it so the quizzes due just before the start of class. So I'd like you to have it submitted before the start of class, and then basically you'll be presenting what you've just done. So you've got a whole week, and Mike and I are available all week for questions. You can email us, you can text us. If you just for any points of clarification, and we're here to help. It's good to see as much involvement as you guys are having in this course. The interaction has been really good so far, so we want to keep that going. All right, so
Yeah.
that's what it looks like, and then stop the share. Okay, and then I can probably pull back up.
So yeah, so I think when you're looking at it, just draw back on some of the themes that we've been talking about the last few weeks and how they tie into those things. And and when you're looking at your attractions, and why we gave a selection is pick something that maybe is interesting to you, or maybe something that you may not have a lot of sort of experience with, and give it a go, right? And start to look below the behind the curtain a little bit about how those places would want to organize themselves, or what you would think would be the most likely way to organize it that would make sense. And then we'll kind of talk about it next week too, about what were our observations, or what were some of the surprise, like aha moments of hey, most people wouldn't think about this, but if I was going to get into that business, then that's something I would really need to know.
Yep. Okay, so Shad, when it comes to presenting means basically what Mike and I are doing right now. So you will have the floor, and you can um, basically what you're going to do is you're going to say, I picked this attraction and this attraction, and then you're going to say, so once again, let's say it's Canada's Wonderland. So Canada's Wonderland, I think the physical and themed attributes are all of these, and list them all out and talk about why you thought that. And here are the departments that I think are you need to operationalize because of it. And then you're going to talk about the other attraction. Then you're going to talk about where the similarities are, and you're going to talk about what the differences are. So it's basically doing what we're doing right now, but you'll have the control of the screen if you want, or if you have a little presentation, or you just are sending me your worksheet and want me to put your worksheet up, and you can walk us through it. That's all we're asking people to do. Did that help?
Yeah, I think, don't get too hung up on the word presentation.
Yeah.
It's not that formal.
No.
It's, more, we want you to generate a discussion about what you've learned is basically what we're trying to do here.
That's
So,
right.
yeah.
That's right. Because I'm just going to switch slides here. So next week, we're going to do these presentations, or you just telling us what you did and where you got to, and then we're going to use what we just learned from you guys, and we're going to continue the discussion, and then we're really going to start to dive into what we were touching upon today, which is that interdepartmental coordination. So that's we're using that first assignment to make sure you're understanding what where we're at, and you've taken it all in, and then we're going to use it as a platform for discussion, for much of the rest of the class. Okay, so we can go back. Let's go back to questions. So are there any other questions about what we've learned so far, about the assignment, about the presentation, or just about the course in general?
It's like we're killing it.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, for sure. And like Chuck said, we're available, so, if you do come up with any questions, or in particular about assignments or anything else like that, then you can reach out to us. And, if we think that the question is pertinent or relevant to the entire group, then we'll just share that back to everybody, just so that if everybody had the same question, then, we can answer it once, as opposed to, 8 times or 10 times or whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, Knopf had to jump off for a second. So I think she's back in. Knopf, did you have any questions about anything?
No, I'm so sorry for the inconvenience.
that's
My
okay.
life is a mess right now.
That's okay. No, okay. No, I just wanted to just make sure. So our door is always open. I've stopped sharing there. So the next, so that's it. I think that's it for this week. We're ending a little bit early, which I think will be okay. Has anyone gone on and made sure that I thought the YouTube channel things worked for the presentations. So hopefully you guys can go back over all 3 of these weeks. I'll convert this one as soon as this is over and get it posted. I will unhide the today's presentation. I will make available the quiz. But once again, do the worksheet. Do all of your work on that worksheet. Make sure you're happy and comfortable with it, and then just copy and paste it into the quiz. That's the best the best idea in my mind. Like I said, we're new to this when it comes to this online, system. And then Mike and I, after next week, we will go through them and we will mark them up and figure out how the heck to post your mark for you to look at. That's our learning curve. It's all very interesting. All right, folks. Thank you very much for your time today. I really enjoyed this one. There was a lot of really interesting and awesome stuff that you guys got down on those Padlets. The links to all the Padlets are in the weekly lesson plan, so you can pull those up and use those as references, and we can go from there. Mike, any last minute words of wisdom?
No, I think, yeah, it was good discussion today, and look forward to next week.
Perfect. All right, guys, thank you very much, and we'll see. Yes, the grades will get us by the quiz. Yes. We will also, just so you know, we're going to grade it after the presentations, but the presentation part is part of that class participation mark. So they're kind of separate, if that makes sense, right? We have
Sorry.
Yep.
So the way I understand it is that we will be like having 2 grades. One will go into the quiz mark, which is for the written part, and then there is another part mark that will go into participation for the presentation.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
exactly. So that's we want to we don't want to the understanding of the content is the most important part of it, and then of course we love the interaction that's taking place, but we don't want to penalize someone if they don't do a great presentation but have great content. So we'll keep the two absolutely separate. If that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I am going to end it here. So thank you very much, and reach out to us if you have any questions. Enjoy the rest of your week, guys. Bye.